To me of the value and importance of what Elizabeth is planning to present tonight to folks in the wider Synod. This tells me that her instincts were good ones in suggesting that this happen. I am particularly happy because this is one of Elizabeth's as yet untapped skills that she brought to the position when she came on with the Synod as the Connections Coordinator. She has a background in knowing how to dig up money from public sources and get it to the right places. And she wants you to have that skill as well. So with the recognition that there is money out there for the ministries that you are doing, and a lot of the times we just don't know how to get to it. So I hope that your appreciation at the end of this evening is as great as my appreciation is at the beginning of this meeting. I am not going to stay on for the whole meeting because I have another one that I have to get to in a few minutes myself, but you are in good hands. And as we do, let's open with prayer. God, we thank you that you give us all that we need to do all that you call us to do. We recognize that sometimes we think we need more, and sometimes we think you're calling us to do more than you actually are. And we recognize that sometimes we don't see how you're giving those things to us that we need. So we ask that this would be a moment tonight where we see a little better how some of the fruit of your generosity to the world, both to the just and the unjust, where you let the rain fall, will be something that we can be aware of, that we can see, and that we can turn to the work of your church in our little corner of the world for the greater glory of your eternal reign. Amen. Thanks for being here, Elizabeth. It's all yours.
Thank you for that lovely intro, Forrest. Friends, I am delighted to be among so many unfamiliar faces. This is very exciting for me. As Forrest shared, I'm very passionate about connecting you with finances. So I want to be able to answer as many questions as I can for you this evening. And if we run out of time, please do not hesitate to email or call me. I will absolutely get back to you. I appreciate the time you took to answer my questions in regards to your needs, and wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on that. It's overwhelmingly clear to me, based on the pie charts that were produced by your answers, that our region is in deep trouble with food insecurity, and in deep trouble with capital improvements, need for technology. Those three things are at the top of our list as a region based on your responses. So I hope that this helps. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. And okay. Can we all see it on slideshow mode now? Did that transfer over okay? All right. So tonight we're talking about creating relationships with funders, which is not a more important step than writing a grant, but a crucial step before writing one. After tonight, my hope is that you will feel confident in pinpointing potential foundations and funding resources within your community and our region, and understanding how best to make contact with a potential funder, what to say in those first conversations that's effective, and how to create a relationship that really goes the duration of time. So what we have here, and bonus points to someone who could tell me who this lovely lady is and what movie she's from. Great Aunt Harriet versus Powerball. Powerball sounds great, right? We all want to win Powerball. In the funding world, Powerball is Carnegie Mellon, the Ford Foundation, entities of this nature that have a lot of money. maybe that we don't necessarily have contacts for. For example, Mike and I, and let me actually backtrack a minute. I meant to address Mike earlier. I am so thankful for my colleague Mike being here and monitoring the chat and helping out. Thank you, Mike. But Mike and I don't have contacts to Powerball foundations. So when I go after funding for you, I approach Great Aunt Harriet. Now, we've all had a Great Aunt Harriet, right? Many of us went to college. When we did, there was that beloved older relative that would occasionally send us $5, right? And how did we get there? How did we get to a point that Great Aunt Harriet was still thinking about us, even though we weren't face to face? We developed that relationship early on. We shared our lives with her. We were thankful to her when she sent a birthday gift or Christmas gift. We listened to her. We watched what she did in the community. The Great Aunt Harriet foundations in our communities are the ones that can provide the most stable and lengthy funding for us. So we'll start learning about her first. She is elusive, but you can hunt her down. So hunting for your own Great Aunt Harriet. Hopefully you all can see her in here. She is there. The first step that we need to take is to canvass the neighborhood, step one. So I'm going to use the example of food insecurity as the issue we're dealing with tonight, since I am aware that so many of you are managing food pantries, figuring out how to get food to folks in your community, whether it's soup kitchen, food pantry, many other vehicles for that. But if you are seeking to do that, what would you look at? You would look at another soup kitchen, another food pantry in your community, or even a social service agency that has branches that give food, any organization that's providing food. You would look and you would one by one go through those annual reports. Yeah, I know that sounds like a pain. And what's an annual report, by the way? Well, we all do taxes, not our favorite thing. And any 501c3, which is a nonprofit, does an annual report. It tells you where their money came from and where it went, and what initiatives are important to them. Those are the three main things. It does share other things too. So we are going to look and see who is giving to the soup kitchen in your neighborhood. Which foundations are in the report? Do you recognize any names? Let's look at their board members, their donors. Who do you know? This is a really important thing to do. Now, folks, this can feel like dirty work, right? You're essentially checking out another organization that's doing something similar to you're doing and saying, who's helping them? Well, it may sound dirty, but we're all here to help each other. And someday someone will be looking at your annual report. So the easiest way to really organize your thoughts is to create an Excel sheet. And I say this because we don't have big, expensive databases to manage our communication, our relationship, our contacts. So we create our own, right? And contrary to popular belief, hunting down money, writing grants, developing relationships is actually very formulaic and analytical. This is not creative writing at all, beyond one or two sentences. So being organized and being able to analyze what you find and keep it in one space is critical for you to move forward. So what I've done here, and unfortunately the tabs aren't showing on the bottom of my screen. Hopefully you can see them. There are 3 tabs, and one is going to share with us the organizations, right? So we know that we're looking at soup kitchens. We're looking at places that give food. What are 2 places? These are obviously fictional. Thrive Meals for Kids, Nutrition for Neighbors. Great. You know what? I'm going to check out their annual reports. And what do I find? I find several foundations that look like they could be a match for what I'm trying to do. Great. I'll write them down. And I browsed through the individual donors. I saw that Mr. Mason Jar is a friend of Joe Jinkelheimer, who's on session at my church and also happens to work at Giant. Mrs. Arby King owns 3 Arby King franchises. So she's maybe not who I'm looking for, right? I'm not looking to get fast food, but nonetheless, I know who she is. So I'm going to put her down because you never know. Miss Asparagus is the best friend of the board member of the soup kitchen I'm looking to get funds for. Great. Excellent. Make sure I write that down. Down here, we have Nutrition for Neighbors. We've done the same thing, right? America Runs on Soda Foundation. Probably not what we're looking for, but you know what? We're going to put it down anyway. You never know when they might decide to give nutrition. Oh, I know Mrs. Baconburger. I know Mr. Salmon Filet. So you get the picture here, I hope. Step 2, and we already looked at this a little bit, but now that we've written down those foundations, we're going to go to the website for each of those foundations, and we are going to be very methodical. We're going to ask some questions, take some notes, and put them in our trusty spreadsheet. Do the initiatives align with my need or cause? So maybe last year, the Protein for All Foundation was giving a great deal of non-perishable goods to food pantries. Great. They seem like they'd be wonderful. Let's check out their website and make sure, though. Oh, you know what? This year they're funding nutritional research. That's not going to help us out. So it's really important to get to know your funder or potential funder in order to find the right Great Aunt Harriet for you. You want to be careful to note their application deadline. Otherwise, what happens? You find a fantastic looking foundation that's wonderful, and the deadline was 2 weeks ago. You want to look at where they've given in the past. We talked about this a little bit. And how those entities line up with your own organization's purpose, right? So if you are looking at a place that is donating fast food meals to children that have just finished doing their basketball games on the community court, that's probably not what you're going for, right? You're looking for a food pantry donation. Do you recognize the names of board members or program officers? Friends, our communities in this region are small. There are overlaps, which we will talk about. So now you can see, we were on the comparable organizations tab. Now we've taken those foundations that are potential foundations, and we have moved them into the second tab. Very helpful. So I've researched each of them, right? And you can see I've gotten through part of my list. I got to the Nutrition for All Foundation, as far as I got. And let's just take Foundation of Rural PA here. The initiatives align. Awesome. The deadlines are rolling, even better. And where have they given? Oh, the Sandwich Kitchen, the Grocery Garden, Teen Tutoring Time. No, I don't know about Teen Tutoring Time. Mr. Salmon Filet. Wait a minute. I think I knew him, right? He was on our other sheet. He was married to Mrs. Carrot, who I work with. Okay, so that's a long shot, kind of. It's doable. Not so sure where Teen Tutoring Time fits in. I'm going to prioritize this foundation as a B. I have an A list, a B list, and a C list, because there's a couple things that don't add up, right? We have an influencing connector, Mr. Salmon Filet, who's maybe not the closest to us. It's a little distance. And we're a little confused because, yeah, it looks like they're doing food, but it also looks like they're tutoring. Are they moving into tutoring for next year? Are they moving into early childhood development? What's happening there? I'm going to keep going. The Fiber and Protein Foundation, my personal favorite. So initiatives align. Oh, there's an upcoming deadline. Now I really need to research. They've given to food pantries, Grocery Garden, and the local shelter, which I know because my husband volunteers there, and they provide meals. So that's food related too. Oh, and look, their board member, Mr. Greenbean, is friends with Miss Asparagus, who's on my board. This is a good prospect. We have an influencing connector. That would be Miss Asparagus, who has a close contact to one of their main contacts. This would be my A list foundation for the moment. Marin Builders Foundation. Initiatives are not aligning. They build homes for hounds. Wonderful. I love dogs. Dog houses are great. Don't really need them at the food pantry. Nutrition for All Foundation. Okay, here we go. Initiatives align. That looks good. Downline's far off. Oh, their giving isn't really matching their initiatives. In fact, it's kind of all over the place. What could be happening there? Maybe they have board members involved in Little League or bilingual translator services or Grocery Garden. Their initiatives are great, but they're not sticking to them. So they're kind of a wild card, right? I'm going to put in a lot of labor and time developing this grant for them, developing a relationship with them. And it may not go anywhere. So step 3, and we talked about this just a little bit, we're going to find our sphere of influence connectors. I know that sounds scary, but let's think of it this way. I couldn't find a great graphic for this, unfortunately. We all have a sphere of influence, right? A circle of people around us that we know. They touch our inner circles, maybe our church circles, our work circles, our school circles, wherever you may be. Well, those people also touch other circles. And eventually, you're going to have someone in your circle who's a connector to the foundation circle that you're trying to merge into. So research your connectors, right? I'm going to research Miss Asparagus, and I'm going to say, what else does she give besides us? That's interesting. What else does she belong to? Oh, look at that. She's on the board for the Weiss Company. Who knew? Where else do they show up in our community? Oh, okay. So they work heavily with the shelter. That's great. Most of my clients come from the shelter. So where do they overlap? How long have they overlapped? Well, Miss Asparagus, she's been, working in the shelter now for almost 10 years. It's a very strong overlap, very strong relationship. A lot of points in common. So now we're ready to really pinpoint the hunt. So we have our new tab, tracking the hunt. We have an A, B, and C list. Some people color code, some people don't. I like to color code. That's just my style. You can find your own style for this. But my A list is obviously the Fiber and Protein Foundation. Now, we are all really busy people. It's hard to track every single minute of our time, but it is very, very important to track our relationships and the process we go through to create a relationship with Great Aunt Harriet. This is key. So I'm going to log everything that I do to create this relationship. So my A list, the Fiber and Protein Foundation, I emailed Mr. Greenbean, right? Knowing that he has this contact. And he didn't get back to me. So I went and I followed up with a voicemail. Finally, Mr. Greenbean returned my call. We had a great chat. I asked how his son's Little League tournament went. And he graciously agreed to introduce me to Miss Asparagus over email. I thanked him and I invited him to join in our sandwich workshop this Thursday. I immediately mailed a thank you note to Mr. Green. I know thank you notes are outdated in many parts of our culture right now. They are not outdated when it comes to fundraising. They serve as two purposes. They serve to express your tremendous gratitude and respect for the person interested in your cause. And also, in this case, to serve as a reminder. Hey, Mr. Greenbean, Thanks so much for connecting me to Miss Asparagus. Oh, he gets it in the mail. Must have gotten it probably the 15th, because the 16th he was like, oh shoot, I never sent that email. The 16th, Mr. Greenbean introduced me to Miss Asparagus. I immediately responded warmly to both of them and gave a soft pitch in my response. Okay, so you get the drift, and you can see that we've been working hard on our A-list. Now, in an ideal world, if you were a professional fundraiser and had nothing else to do, which I know is not the case for many of you, you would have 10 to 15 people on your A list, right? 15 to 30 on your B list, 30 to 45 on your C list. I know that sounds like a lot, and it is, and that's not what you're aiming for now. This tool is simply to allow you to organize your thoughts and your actions and your priorities. So let's move on to our B list, Foundation of Rural PA. This is a tough one, right? Because if you remember from our comparable organization sheet, Mrs. Carrot works with me, right? So this is weird. I'm like, well, I'll have lunch with her and I'll just gently ask, hey, would Mr. Salmon Filet, who happens to be her husband, be interested in introducing us to the foundation? Am I overstepping, or is that okay, Mrs. Carrot? I mean, what do you think? Mrs. Carrot was gracious and indicated that she would chat with Mr. Filet. This happened when? February 15th. There's been no follow-up since. So obviously, I can go back to her. This needs to be done delicately. This is a delicate relationship, as are many relationships in the world of fundraising. So I'm going to wait till a social situation or the right moment and just say, hey, Mrs. Carrot, thanks so much for talking to Mr. Filet. If it doesn't work out, it's okay, right? And give her that out. Nutrition for All. This was our wild card, right? Our C list, our one that we really weren't so sure about. We haven't really had time to get back to them because we've been so busy working on the Fiber and Protein Foundation that way back in January, we researched contact info and giving details. And I really need to get on it and email the program officer, Vite Ammon, and, reach out. Haven't done that yet. So tracking the hunt allows you to track your communication, track your priorities, and produces action items for you. These are things that you really need, and things that are usually provided through a professional database, a profession like Razor's Edge. Some of you may know about that. Those are thousands and thousands of dollars that people in our positions don't have. So what have we done? We've gotten creative. Many people have, and figured out that this is a great tool. All right, we've reached step 4. We now have been introduced to Miss Asparagus, and we are working on creating a communication strategy. Are you there, Great Aunt Harriet? It's me, fundraiser. Your first conversation, you're going to reach out to your influencing connector. And actually, before we move on here, I want to pause. I want to pause and see what questions we have in regards to our organizational tool and our method of figuring out who's going to be on our A, B, and C list. Are there questions, comments? I can't see because I have my full screen on, but feel free to jump in.
You can put questions in the chat or raise your digital hand, and we can call on you from that.
Okay, I will move forward then. So from here, we're going to reach out to our influencing connector. Do you remember who this is? We do. Okay. Our influencing connector is the person on our board that knew Mr. Asparagus. We're going to be very earnest and forthcoming in our conversation with Miss Asparagus, and we're going to say, hey, I know that you sit on the board of Great Aunt Harriet's Foundation, and you've been really active there, and I love the work you're doing. Do you think we're a good match for it? Being transparent is appreciated in any industry, and especially this one. And follow your instincts. If you hear something like, well, I think what you're doing is great work, and a couple of years ago, they funded something like a soup kitchen. This year, I don't know. What does that tell you? Their priorities are spoken for. Their funds are spoken for. This year, I don't know. This is a board member, so this is someone that can speak for the foundation. If they're enthusiastic and they say, I am so glad you reached out, you really do fit our cause, and we just weren't aware of you because we know you're just getting started. I'm really glad to learn about this. Oh, thank you. Is there any way you'd be interested or you'd be willing in introducing me to someone over at Great Aunt Harriet's Foundation? Is there a way that I can get to know their priorities better? Now, your connector was delighted and said, absolutely, I'm happy to introduce you to someone at Great Aunt Harriet's Foundation. Great. You're going to be warm and candid about your organization's initiative and why you're interested in receiving support. That's really critical. The transparency, the honesty, the enthusiasm. Equally critical are the facts that you bring to the table. If you come to this conversation and you don't know your budget, you don't have specifics on the needs you're serving. Yeah, we're serving the Smith neighborhood. Oh, great. I don't know anyone who lives over there. Oh, no. They're looking for demographics. We're serving the Smith neighborhood. It's 78% African-American, 9% Hispanic. You get the picture here, right? You're giving them details. You're also going to share your partners because they want to know, are there buy-ins? Well, yeah, I'm actually in conversation with another foundation too. You're going to share that. You're going to say, yeah, we have some great people on our board. There's some great people involved in this. Whether it's a board, whether it's someone that is able to do, for example, the capital improvements on your church. Great. Who are they? How do you connect with them? You're building trust. And the better your pitch is, the better chance of this board member going to bat for your organization and supporting your request for funding. If I call this board member, I say, hey, would you be interested in trying to get Great Aunt Harriet to give us some money? We're doing a little soup kitchen thing over here. That's not great, right? That doesn't elicit trust. That's not building a relationship. We build relationships with foundations the same way we build relationships with one another. If your new contact on the board expresses enthusiasm, ask for guidance. Hey, I really appreciate you being interested in this. Thank you. So what should I do next? Who shall I reach out to? Is there a great way for me to get to know Aunt Harriet's Foundation better? Their response could include any of the following. They could say, well, yeah, Jane, the program officer at Great Aunt Harriet's Foundation, she works specifically with food insecurity. She's the one you want to talk to. And give her a call, tell her I sent you, or, better yet, maybe I'll just send an email to the two of you. Even better. That's always your first go-to, by the way. When you do make this contact, it's wonderful to call and say, hey, I know Joe Schmo on your board, and he recommended I call you. That's wonderful. It's far more fantastic if Joe Schmo on the board reaches out to Jane, the program officer, and says, hey, I just connected with this great soup kitchen director, so on and so forth, and I really wanted to introduce the two of you. They may not do that. They may be doing more of a hands-off. I apologize. My cats are fighting in the background. If you can hear that, I am so sorry. They may suggest that you provide a letter of introduction and inquiry. specifically referencing your contact as your referral. Will you excuse me 1 minute? I am so sorry. I apologize. All right. So they may not offer to connect you more directly. That might not happen. They may say, oh yeah, you know, they're great people. The best thing you can do is send a letter of introduction and inquiry and just let them know that I suggested it. Okay, great. You are going to be spending a lot of time writing that letter of inquiry and letter of introduction. We will get more in detail regarding a letter of inquiry next week. It is the first step in submitting a grant, and sometimes in conjunction with a letter of introduction. But it is not something that you just sit down and write in 5 minutes. Best case scenario, your contact says, hey, you know what? We have a review date in 2 weeks. Why don't you submit that proposal? I'll take that to the board. I'll offer my support in the review. Excellent. You're bypassing even talking to the program officer. You're going straight to the check writers. These are generally the 3 alternatives that you have in terms of response. It can vary a little, but these are what you should be prepared for. Do you have any questions now?
Again, you're welcome to raise your digital hand or put the questions in the chat. I see one, Elizabeth.
Oh, great.
I'm in Zimbabwe and my family is actively involved with vulnerable children, mainly advocating for their integration into families and/or unification. How can I also get into contact with funders?
Okay. That's a great question. You're seeking specific funding. You're seeking international funding. And I would love to talk with you. There are options out there in terms of getting in touch with funders and finding them. I am going to speak to that a little bit more at the end in a way that would serve the international community. I also would love it if you dropped me an email and we could talk further.
Another question, have you found foundation contacts to be as gracious as you make it seem?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is yes. There's a beauty in foundation contacts in that these are not individual major donors. These are not extremely wealthy people who may feel very entitled and maybe very rude. It happens, right? It happens whether you're wealthy or not wealthy. You do get the donor that's like, well, I wrote the $1 million check, so you're going to do it my way and what I say. That's not something we need to talk about now. There are safety measures you can put in place to keep that from happening to you and your organization. But foundations are notoriously gracious. They rely on their integrity. Their reputation is everything, really. And most of them take themselves pretty seriously and care deeply about the communities they're serving.
Last comment is your presentation is clear and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. You made my night. Thank you so much. And again, I just want to apologize for my horrible cats. That was so embarrassing.
Yeah, we're not hearing them at all, so you're good.
Okay, great. Excellent. I'm really happy to hear that. All right. So now it's getting exciting. We're on conversation next, number 3. Great Aunt Harriet, can you hear me now? You have reached the top dog. You're reaching out to her. You are expressing your interest and support, or excuse me, interest and appreciation for the work that Great Aunt Harriet has supported. You're on the phone. You're talking to the program officer. So I'm so excited about the work that's being done around food insecurity, about the work that's being done around eliminating chronic illness through nutrition. This is wonderful, and it's what we're aiming to do too. What are the goals for the coming year? Are they similar? Is this something that we would match up with? Do we fit in? What are your thoughts? How can we work together? A good program officer, which as a side note, is some of the functions of a program officer are very similar to the functions of my role at the Synod. So a good program officer is going to talk with you and has the tools to immediately evaluate whether or not you're someone of integrity, your organization, someone of integrity, and someone that they want to receive a proposal from. If they do, they're going to work with you and influence how you craft that proposal. They're going to make themselves available for questions. And, not hold your hand every step of the way. They're not going to promise you funding, because every application goes through a process, a review process, and it's more than just one person. But they will advocate for you if you have made that relationship one that they want to advocate for. So going back to a little bit about Synod grants, some of you I've had the joy of working with, and you've called me and you've said, I really want to apply for an innovation grant. Does this fit? What do I say in this part of the application? How do I make this work? I'm absolutely here to help with that. Please don't hesitate to reach out. So now's the time when I'm going to say to Jane, the program officer, I'm really interested in working with Great Aunt Harriet. I think we're a great match for this foundation, because we are absolutely addressing the issues surrounding early childhood obesity that are taking place in the Smith neighborhood. And we're not going to be handing out hamburgers at our soup kitchen. We're looking at handing out nutritious, well-rounded meals that can really help our community thrive. And I see that you're doing that in the work you're doing this year, and I'd really like to be a part of that. So treating a potential funder like a partner in your work is critical. Just like your Great Aunt Harriet, right? When you were 5 or 6 and you saw Great Aunt Harriet, what did you tell her? I scored my first goal in soccer. It was so awesome. Did you play soccer, Aunt Harriet? You're creating a relationship. You expressed interest in her. When she sent you that $5, you thanked her. You thanked her for the birthday card. You were excited to see her at Christmas. She was part of the village that raised you. A potential funder needs to be treated as part of your village too. If you want that funder to be part of your funding in the future, which you do. We all need the meat and potatoes foundations. Those are the ones that are there for us, repeated cycles, the ones that show up, the ones that help us grow, the ones that challenge us. A good funder doesn't just throw money at someone and walk away. They have expectations too. Okay, so now things have gotten exciting. Great Aunt Harriet sent you a check, and it was for more than $5. Oh my gosh, you can go buy a bunch of groceries. You can even buy refrigeration. I mean, you're really getting set up with this food pantry, thanks to Great Aunt Harriet and the partnership you've developed. What do you do when you get the check? Immediately write a thank you note. You be sure to mention each person with whom you came in contact with at the foundation. Foundations rely a lot on interns. Interns do a lot of work. Maybe that's the person you spoke with as the gatekeeper before you even got to the program officer, despite the fact that your contact recommended you. You're going to mention that intern. It'll make her day. And you're going to include Aunt Harriet in every project milestone, unless she says, hey, I only want to hear from you on days that I tell you I want to hear from you. I only want to hear from you this time during the year with this report. Otherwise, when you break ground on your food pantry and plug in that first refrigerator, guess who you want there? And guess who you want in the pictures? And guess who you want to say thank you to? Thank you so much, Great Aunt Harriet. Thanks to you, we are serving 300 families today, and we couldn't do this without you. Great Aunt Harriet's logo, with their permission, is on every publication. It's on your wall of donors. It's wherever you give recognition. Maybe you don't have a wall of donors, you're a church, and that's understandable. But when you open your food pantry, and whenever you list who made that possible, in the flyer, when you list who made that possible, in the bulletin in church that Sunday, Great Aunt Harriet needs to be there. Make sure she's the first one invited to view your accomplishments. 2 years later, when you move into a new building and she's still funding you, she gets an invitation and she's sitting at the table as one of your founding funders. When you're ready to build that new building and move into it, before you even think about the process and the money you'll need, you honor the relationship that you've created with Great Aunt Harriet, and you say, hey, we're outgrowing this building. We're thinking about this. We saw a building on Y Street. We also saw a building on J Street. I don't know. Great Aunt Harriet's going to have some thoughts, feedback, and maybe even some contacts. The more you engage with her, the greater the relationship will be, the longer she will be around in your life. Now, there's some business protocol here, right? Great Aunt Harriet gets audited like everybody else, and she's going to have some project reports you need to fill out, and some of them might be a pain. They might have tables, they might have PDFs, or they might be easy. Every foundation is different. Again, your program officer that you now know really well is going to be able to walk you through that. They will look for several things. They're going to give you a format and guidelines. Bottom line, what do they need? This is for their auditing. This is for their own peace of mind. They need to know where the money went. If they gave you $5,000 and you spent $2,000 on refrigerators plus tax, which you wouldn't have because you're a nonprofit, you want to be sure to detail that in your budget to them. If you spent 17 cents on a can of beans, you detail that. You're going to provide them with as much detail as you can, even detail they don't ask for when it comes to the budget, because it builds trust, right? Absolutely. And you're going to be timely and detailed. What is the biggest frustration in the foundation world? When you're gracious enough to fund a project and the director of that project is late on every single report to you, or doesn't get it in, you have to call and ask for it, even worse. And Great Aunt Harriet, she was wonderful. She came to the groundbreaking ceremony, but you know what? Let's send some pictures, because that program officer probably wasn't there. The face of the foundation was, but probably not the program officer, and she would love to be included in this report and see what was going on. Include as much as you can. This is a letter to a dear and respected person in your community, right? In your tiny village that's made your project happen. Are there any questions or thoughts?
Again, you're welcome to put questions in the chat or raise your digital hand.
Okay. You forgot about Powerball, right? I mean, it's never far from any of our minds. We all know what we do if we won the Powerball, but is it worth it to play Powerball with a foundation? Is it worth it to submit an application? When's the right time? How do I do it? This sounds like a huge drain. Yeah, well, it might be. It might be a huge drain, but when is it worth it to play Powerball? When your soup kitchen is up and running, your operating budget's in good form, your roof isn't leaking, your needs are met, and you're looking ahead and you're like, wow, this is really taking off. And I could build a community garden that would serve so many seniors and be so helpful. And I think in a year and a half, I want to do that. I've got everything else running. Here's my real dream. You're not desperate, right? You're still making a difference without the community garden. be nice to have, and you've got the time to play Powerball. You've got the time to reach out to Pittsburgh Foundation, to Carnegie, to any of the larger prestigious foundations in our area. What's it going to hurt? Okay, you don't know anyone there? Don't give up. That never stopped you from applying for a job, right? Sometimes we've applied for jobs, we haven't known anyone. All right. You've already managed to create a relationship with Great Aunt Harriet that's pretty awesome. So that reflects on you. If you're ready to cold call, go ahead and cold call the Powerball Foundation. Maybe worth it. You may learn something. Don't get scared. I just tried to make it interesting so no one fell asleep. You're going to go on the website and you're going to find the appropriate program officer, right? You don't know Jane. This is a new group. You don't have any contacts. Jan is a program officer here for food insecurity. You don't know anything about her. Yeah, you might look her up on Facebook and see, but that didn't help much. So you're going to cold call her by sending her an email. You're going to say, wow, I'm so impressed with what the Powerball is doing. You know, it's given so much, it's made XYZ difference in our community. It's impacted 37,000 people of color, whatever the case is. And gosh, it's so similar to some of the things that we're doing too. I see that you gave to the soup kitchen on J Street. They're doing a lot of the work we're doing. A lot of similarities. Here's one thing we're doing different. It's a little different than what you supported in the past. It's a little more progressive. We're pretty excited about our new plan, the community food garden. There isn't one over here. This neighborhood needs one. Have you ever considered giving to one of those? Our big Powerball foundations have a major buzzword that's never gone away: sustainable. They want two things. They want to know that this isn't a one-off thing that's going to shutter its doors, because their credibility and reputation is very important to them. They're a pillar of the community usually. So it's important that they associate with serious, impactful work in their minds. So how is your soup kitchen, and more importantly, how is your community garden that hasn't happened yet going to be sustainable for years to come? And is it a model? By is it a model, friends, I mean, is this something that can be done in other communities? Is this something that they can say, hey, we gave you guys a grant, not us, but some other group a grant last year. Did you think about doing this? Because if so, we have a model you can use. So we addressed it a little bit, right? In the third point where it says, share the work that you're doing. What makes it a little bit different? Well, the community garden's a little different. That's a model. It's sustainable. You're going to close just like you would if you were submitting a job application. Thank you so much for your time and reading this, and you're taking a moment to consider our organization. Would you be willing to talk with me and provide some guidance and feedback? The interesting thing that's different between Aunt Harriet's foundation and a Powerball foundation, Aunt Harriet generally is driven by heart. She has created a foundation for food insecurity because she survived a famine in Ireland as a child, and because she came over here and still had very little food. She knows what it's like to be hungry. The people she employs are people that are her friends, people that are family members, people that are contacts. A Powerball foundation looks at the community and says, wow, food insecurity, a lot of people hungry. How many? We should do a study. Well, 37,000 people are hungry. Well, that's nice. How do those demographics break down? Are they elderly? Are they young? Are they families? Are they working? Are they not working? They have a lot of data. And the people they employ are people who are specialists in this area. So the program officer might have a PhD in nutrition, or a PhD in, rural poverty, right? So you're talking to two very different animals when you're talking to Great Aunt Harriet's people and when you're talking to Powerball people. It's important to know that. And it's important to know that you deserve to talk to Powerball people, not be intimidated by them. But that you're probably going to connect a little bit more with Great Aunt Harriet's foundation. And she's probably going to be a little more grassroots and rooted in your community. She's probably going to know who you are. My screen, okay.
There is a question, Elizabeth, sorry.
Oh, great.
What goes in the second letter to an organization if you hear nothing back from the first one? That has happened to me over and over.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, and please reach out to me so I can help you work through that. We're going to talk about that in our next slide, and that's a very good question. So if you send a letter and they write back and they're receptive to a phone call, you're going to go back to that third conversation slide and use the same skills that you used in your conversation with Aunt Harriet. If a week passes and you don't receive a response to your email, you're going to follow up on it like our friend who had the question did. Send another email. Follow up with a phone call. I'm sorry that you're having the experience you're having, because in my experience, most Powerball foundations and Aunt Harriet foundations have a lot of integrity and will generally respond to your first or second outreach, even if it's to say, no, thank you. And they say it nicely. Oh, our funding's run out this year. It's already committed. Right. I really like what you're doing, but we're moving in a different direction this year. Generally, they have enough integrity to respond. And if they're not responding to you, I would venture to say that they are possibly on their way out. Foundations do close. They do run out of money. Or any number of other things. Or there could be a relationship that has soured between your organization and their foundation that you may have nothing to do with and know nothing of. And unfortunately, that does happen. So, my friend in Zimbabwe, let's talk a little bit about this. What's a prospecting database? This is especially helpful if you are international and if you are looking at something that's not as pedestrian as some of the issues we've talked about tonight. A prospecting database provides a wealth of information. We have one at the Synod, and I use it frequently. It provides detailed contact information, board employee list. It tells me the main initiatives and focuses. It tells me exactly how many dollars that foundation has to give. And furthermore, it allows me to organize my A, B, and C list within its database. It has a lot of really cool tools in there. What's the most important tool to me? The 990 tax form for the years past. These things are daunting, folks. We will talk about them. We can talk about them. They would take another session. I'm happy to do it if someone's interested. They're extremely helpful. They can range from 5 pages long to 65 pages long. And once you've seen a few of them, you know to keep scrolling and where to stop. And until you've seen a few of them, you look at every page till you find what you're going for. What is a 990 tax form? What tax form? Why would you care? I mean, everybody hates taxes, right? We just want to do them, get them over with till the next year. No. If you're a sick research nerd like me, you love these forms because they either validate your hunch about a foundation and whether they're a good fit, or they blow your hunch out of the water and you can move on to finding another A-lister. A 990 tax form tells me in concise detail how much and to whom, which nonprofit entity the foundation has provided funds to each year. The Nutrition for All Foundation can say all at once it's given to every soup kitchen in the world, but if it's 990, shows me that it's given, $7.5 million to Ronald McDonald House. That's great. They need money too, but that's not a soup kitchen, right? That's not a food pantry. So the 990 is where you find the nitty gritty. It's where you find accuracy, and you can quickly determine whether the foundation is active and focused on its initiatives. And you can determine whether it's serving mainly as a tax shelter, which we are going to talk about also. So if I look at, and this happens a lot, if I look at a 990 for, I don't know, the Jingleheimer Schmidt Foundation, and I see, oh my gosh, this is great. They're in Ligonier, and they gave to the Ligonier Episcopal Church and the Ligonier Lutheran Church and every church in Ligonier for organ restoration. This is fantastic. My Presbyterian church there needs their organ restored. This is the foundation for me, right? So that's a really happy find. And it does happen. And you feel like you've won the lottery when you find that information. Not the Powerball, just the lottery. But you also can find, they said that organ restoration is their bread and butter, and they're really into this. They haven't given anything to anyone in 10 years. This is weird. Wow, they have a PO box. They only have 4 people listed as officers and employees. What's that all about? Well, my friends, let's find out.
Elizabeth, a question in the chat quickly. Is the 990 available on a foundation's website? How do you find this?
Some foundations are gracious enough to make them available on their websites. I've provided some websites that we're going to get to that you can look at them on. Many of them are fee-based, right? Like Grant Station is one we belong to. And I would argue that Grant Station is the most affordable option and one of the best options. They're also really willing to work with you as far as payment goes. So every year they'll have a membership drive, and it's like $169, right? Versus like $400. Some of these can be thousands of dollars. But most 990s you can find easily through a prospecting database. That is the best way to find them, the easiest way. If you're spending hours and hours looking for your 990s, that's probably not the best use of your time.
Someone said charitynavigator.org is a good place to find 990s.
Yeah, that is a good one. That is a good one.
One final question is, will you make the PowerPoint available for everyone?
Yes, absolutely it will be. Thank you for asking. Great Aunt Harriet, are you hiding something? Remember we were talking about that foundation that, had like 4 people in a PO box and hadn't given any money for 10 years, and everything was in like a Vanguard account. I mean, it was just weird looking. This 990 was like 2 pages long. How bizarre is that? How can I tell if a foundation is serving mainly as a tax shelter? Folks, I'm going to be honest. I might sound like I know what a tax shelter is, but I am sitting in a townhouse now with really old furniture. I don't have a tax shelter. This is the only way I know what it is by reading these things. So tax shelters usually only occur with family foundations that are managed completely by families and close friends, right? So when you look at a 990 for Aunt Harriet's Wonderful Foundation or a Powerball Foundation, you're going to see a lot of employees. You're going to see a lot of personnel costs, different addresses. You're going to see a separate accounting firm on there. If you look at a 990 that's serving mainly as a tax shelter, it's going to be short. There's not going to be a lot of information. What are some clues that you're looking at a tax shelter foundation? Well, they provide funding here and there every few years. You can't find any funding having been given out. This does happen. And the money is held in various stock portfolios. My personal favorite is when you see it held in real estate. Not kidding. You see real estate offerings being listed in the 990. So they're essentially using a foundation to buy a bunch of property and hold on to it. And they're probably a 5-person family. Another way you can tell is the same entities or entity is funded year after year. Okay, this one is very, very frequent. So let's say Mike and Forrest and I decide to have a foundation because, you know, we've all won the Powerball working for the Presbyterian Church. We decide to have a foundation, but you know what? Mike loves pickleball. He's only giving money to pickleball, right? I like to knit. I'm giving money to all my friends that knit to buy really expensive yarn, and we're calling it a knitting club, and we're knitting hats for everybody in the chemo wing of Hershey Hospital. So we're getting some money to buy our yarn with, right? Getting a grant for that. You know, Forrest, he really, really loves animals. So he's giving all his money to a Save the Cat Foundation. Okay. Or Save the Cat organization. And we see gifts being given to these 3 organizations year after year after year. Okay, great. They're giving out money. They say they love nutrition. Not really, right? This is a board that has their pet donations that they make. Those are obvious, easy to spot. So some of the prospecting databases and resources, and this is just a handful, there are many out there. If anyone here works at a seminary or a college or a private school, I guarantee you have a subscription to a prospecting database at your institution. And whoever owns that, I'm sure will be happy to share with you. You can usually get on it through the library or through your development office. So be sure to seek those folks out. It'll make your life much easier. If not, check out these things. If somebody like my friend in Zimbabwe, I'm now very curious about what you're doing, my friend, and I hope you reach out to me because I would like to learn more about what you're doing, and I would like to get on my own prospecting database and find some opportunities for you. Any questions? This is also an opportunity. These are expensive. In many cases, this is an opportunity, say 3 or 4 presbyteries wanted to get together, buy a membership under the name of one presbytery. Excellent, great. Maybe you have one person designated to do your searching. It doesn't take long. Research does not take long whenever you have a great research tool. If you get one of these and you need some training and how to use it, please call me. I'm happy to help. Any questions? Is this helpful to you? Is there something I'm not answering that you're curious about? Is there anything I can go back to and clarify?
Question, is it acceptable for a presbytery to hold a subscription and allow its churches to use it?
That would depend. You know, likely that's not the greatest idea because you're going to be giving that information out to a whole lot of people, that login information. And it would be better for you to take requests from your churches. So it'd be better for First Presbyterian to contact you and say, hey, you know, we need an elevator. Great. And here's the beauty of this, folks. If I'm going to speak specifically to presbyteries now. If you are a presbytery and you get one of these databases, you are going to quickly get to know the funders in your area. And when First Presbyterian calls you about that elevator, you're going to say, you know what? I can think of 2 or 3 places that might be able to help. So you'll get to know your regional resources, your community resources really quickly. There are ways of organizing and saving your research, saving your prospects. You can even say, you can name one folder elevator. And the foundations that could help that will be there. Now, maybe one of those foundations also is great at helping with soup kitchens. Great. They're going to be in 2 folders. They make it really easy. It's well worth the money. I would advise, you could certainly ask them, can I give this out to churches? They would probably say no. They are looking, to make money too. And I could see how that login information could spread really quickly and get you in trouble.
Questions are coming in. Another one is, do the research tools help you identify foundations in your area of interest, e.g. looking for funding for an after-school program?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, they do. You can often search by cause, by area of interest, by location, by demographics, even by amount. If you need more than $200, you can search for places that will provide, between 5 and 10,000 or whatever. Yeah, there's many ways of searching. Absolutely. And again, folks, I have access to a search resource and I am happy, and I do this for many of you. You'll say, I need this. What do you have for me? I'm happy to go and do that research. That is absolutely not a problem.
What if you're trying to work with an Aunt Mary Foundation but can't find a connector?
That's a great question. I would need to know a little bit more about it, but that's when you cold call. That's when you create your own connection. And I'm happy to work with you on that if you would like. That's not a problem at all.
Another question in the chat. Are you imagining that we are a religious 501c3 or a secular 501c3? 501c3s. Or maybe it's 501(c)(3)s, plural. I'm not sure.
So I'm not sure who's asking or what organization they're with. I would imagine that most of us here tonight are a 501c3 singular. If you are a church that has a preschool or, another arm that is a homeless shelter or a soup kitchen, oftentimes you will have a separate tax ID number for that, and you will be a dual entity. You'll have 2 entities, 2 501c3s. I'm happy to help you clarify that.
Yeah, I think it was, are you religious 501c3s or secular 501c3s, not an S at the end of it?
If you're a presbytery or a church, you're a religious 501c3. Again, I can't see who all is on here. I know that we had some signups from people that I didn't recognize, and that's wonderful. Hopefully this got passed around. You may be a secular 501c3.
Keely has her name up, or her hand up, sorry, if you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Sure. It's not a question so much as a response to Mary Ellen's question about creating your own connections. So I'm the program director at Chrisland Camp, and right now we don't do a ton of grant fundraising, but I'm getting more into that hopefully. And I recently found a foundation in the Pittsburgh area that has supported other camps in that area, but their main focus is in southwestern Pennsylvania. And so we're in Center County, for anyone who doesn't know. So I made a cold call to their foundation. I emailed them and then set up a phone call. And after the initial email, she said, the foundation officer there said, I'm not sure it would be worth it for you to submit a request. You're really not within our funding area. And then after one 30-minute phone call, she said, you know what? Actually, I think the board of directors might go for this. I think you did your research. Go ahead and submit the request. We'll try to get it through. And she gave me a ton of helpful information about if you submit it 15 days earlier, they'll see it with, less other applications and things like that. And it was incredibly helpful. I just submitted it this month, so I don't know if we'll get that funding or not, but for a 30-minute cold call, it went from don't even try to, yeah, I think we might be able to do this. So even though they might be like a C-list organization or foundation that, only matches 75% of the criteria that you're looking for, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Like Elizabeth said, most of them are very welcoming and helpful and straightforward, even if they don't think they're the best option for you. So yeah, don't be afraid to
Keely,
make your
that
own
is
connection, I guess.
awesome. I'm so excited for you. That's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that. That's really wonderful. And she's exactly right.
I'm excited too. I hope the funding comes through because they supported a lot of camps very similar to us. And the only thing that we didn't have on their, list of funding priorities is our location. But, that seems like a pretty small thing in the broader sense of like what we as camps do. So I'm hoping it works out.
Please let me know. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, will do. I should know by the end of May, I think.
Awesome.
Another comment, West Virginia churches are not allowed to incorporate, was a comment. Excuse me. Another comment, I plan on using this info for an annual rescue group I volunteer with. I belong to Forrest's wife Karen's church in Pittsburgh. She's our new pastor. That's how I found out about this presentation. Thank you.
I'm so glad you came. Thank you. And this will be sent around to everyone who registered. There was a lot of folks who couldn't be here tonight because of Lent, which is understandable. And do feel free to pass this on to anyone that you think would be helpful to. Do feel free to pass on my contact information. I am always happy to help people, even if they're not in our presbyteries and so forth. If they're a rescue organization, call me. I'm happy to help. Anything else? Last time I did this, I had so much Q&A that I built in a lot of time for it tonight, thinking that I would need to do that. So I can't tell if I bored you to death or if I actually answered your questions. I'm not sure.
So I'm seeing very few people that are logging off. So to me, that tells me that you have encapsulated people and they are hearing what you're saying. One quick question, she'd like to know if this is posted on the Presbytery website, if we can post it on a website. We'll supply a link, Maureen, so I would think that's okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Please pass it to anyone that you think would be helpful to. That's why we're all here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and speak for Mike, even though I shouldn't do that. That's why we do what we do, because we like to help. And that's not limited to Presbyterians by a stretch.
You want to promote your one next week as well?
Sure. So if I didn't terrify you enough tonight, next week we're going to be learning about the basics of writing a grant. And that's definitely something that can't be taught in one night. There's different types of grants, there's different types of communication, but we're going to get a good start on it. And if we decide that there's a need for more detail in another workshop, we'll do that too. So please don't hesitate to, if there's something that I missed, if there's something that you'd like to see that isn't addressed next week, reach out. I've really enjoyed being with all of you tonight. Thank
Elizabeth,
you.
I'll pray us out if you're okay with that.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to gather as a community of believers. We thank you for the information that was presented here tonight. We pray that the organizations represented here tonight will be able to acquire funding to be able to do more of your good work in our world, in our communities, in our churches. Be with us as we go from here tonight. Keep us safe and healthy, and watch over us in everything that we do. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike.